Uh, very warm welcome. Another edition of our evening talk. Today is a little special for us because we are doing this jointly with Indian Institute of Management Alumni Association. And the book on which we are theme the discussion, we had some outstanding speakers. Before I call upon the distinguished guest to honor, I want to take a minute to tell you what's happening in MMA, at least next 2-3 programs, if you have missed it in your inbox, so that you don't miss the great event what we are doing. Tomorrow we have another event at the same place, Modern Technologies, Boon, Bane or Bewilderment, and we have got Professor L.S. Ganesh from IIT Madras, along with Raju Venkatraman, former president of MMA, and also founder of and chairman of Medal, he will be talking to us. Then on 29th of November, Positioning India, we have Mr. M.K. Narayanan, former National Security Advisor and former Governor of West Bengal. He'll be delivering the keynote address. We got 3 German dignitaries, senior leaders from German. They'll be coming to us along with Ambassador P.S. Raghavan, the chairman of National Security Advisory Board and former ambassador to Russia. And Stanley John, he'll be leading the moderating from Hindu. He's an international editor of Hindu. He'll be there joining us. And we also got some outstanding speakers, including Peter Rimmel and Pankaj Madan. So it's a very nice event. It's happening at 5:30 to 8 o'clock at Leela Palace, followed by Food for Thought and Food for Stomach. We have a nice cocktail dinner. Please join us. We'll have a nice interaction with some outstanding thought leaders from Chennai will be joining us for this event. Then on the 7th of December, we have supply chain. It's all conclaves, reimagining supply chain, because you know the supply chain is a major issue in India. I think against the world 3.5 to GDP, India is, I think, it's 13.5. How can you control? Then on the 6th, on the 9th, we have R.K. Swami Memorial Lecture on Global Civilization Paradigm and India. Dr. Gurumurthy, Tuklak editor and thought leader, he'll be talking to us. It's happening, all program, what I'm telling is happening live at MMA, in person. Then on the 10th, we have Watershed, how we destroyed India's water and how we can save it, a discussion with Mridula Ramesh, Executive Director of Sundaram. You all know, she also runs, she very writes regular article, Hindu and other magazines on the issues, what is concerning our climate change. Then on 11th, Think Tank, Masterbrain, we have an energy quiz. This we are doing on the occasion of International Energy Day, and where we invited all the college students to participate, and we expect over 300 students to participate in the energy quiz happening again at MMA. And this is the way we want to kindle the thought process of the young students to come and think about how they can save energy, what's happening in the field of energy. This we are doing jointly with NTPC. And again on the 13th, we have a lecture. Then on 16th, we have implementation of Industry 4.0 in the post-pandemic world. We have got outstanding speakers. Kamal Bali is the founder, managing director of Volvo. Then Arvind Chinchure, and we have got some young startups who have designed excellent programs for startups, how to implement some of the technology. We have got 3 outstanding innovators who will be coming and talking to us. Again, Sarangarajan, Senior Vice President of TAFE, and also Gopal Krishnan is again Vice President Hyundai. They're all the people who have really invented and implemented Industry 4.0, and you must come and think. And again, Professor L.S. Ganesh will be moderating this session. Then we have a book reading sessions, and we have another interesting HR conclave, great resignation, great resolution, how the iteration happening in industry today, what is the solution, how employees should be very careful when they resign and go for a better pastures where it is going to be putting them in trouble once the things really different change. We have conclave on with IOD on corporate governance. Then we have women business lecture. We have Anuradha Narasimhan, Professor of Practice from IIT Mumbai, will be talking to us. So we have lined up phenomenal program till 30th December, because our intention is to you move over from the 2011 to 2022, 2021 to 2022 in a very positive frame of mind. That's why we have put together some outstanding events for the benefit of our members, viewers watching the program live from all over India and the world, viewers watching this live on webinar, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our voice of MMA, that is MMA Radio. Once again, very warm welcome to each one of you. It's my privilege now to request all the distinguished dignitaries for this evening to come and take their place on the dais. I'll request Mr. John, sir, Mr. John, Mr. Sandilya, Charulata, Ravi Kumar, our Rajkumar, and also Mr. Biju, sir. You are the real, because you are the chief guest for this evening. That's why you are coming in the end, Mr. Biji Kurien. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our distinguished panelists for this evening. Biji Kurien. Yes. The format of the event is Mr. John will take it forward and brief you what's thing, what are the do's and don'ts, and also how the questions to be raised. Before that, let me now request George Rajkumar. He's a member of MMA Management Committee, the country president of Grand Force, to deliver the formal welcome address. Let me have the privilege of briefly introducing him to the distinguished audience here. He is a current position is the country president of Grand Force and more than 20 years of experience in pump industry. Held various positions in operations, customer support, supply chain, India, Singapore, South Africa, South America, and many more international countries. Since 2013, involved in formulating the strategies for expanding the country's footprint in India, passionate to work with people, developing teams, finding solutions to the complex problems, and also change management. He's been a great source of support to MMA. Whenever we get into trouble, we look up to him with a lot of reference. Welcome, Mr. Rajkumar. I'll deliver you to request you to deliver the formal welcome address. Mr. Rajkumar.
Thank you, Captain. Good evening, all. It's a privilege and honor to be standing here, deliver the formal welcome address for this evening for a unique discussion on the theme of the book called Half a Century, Still at the Crease. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. It's organized by MMA, supported by KS and IIM Ahmedabad Alumni Association. Also, I consider this an honor and welcome this evening Mr. Biji Kurien. Okay, you have a lot of credentials behind your name, but today we will introduce you as the author of this book. Thank you, sir. Also, Casey John, Director, Sri Ramachandra Faculty of Management. Today he is going to moderate the session. Also, Mr. Sandilya, Chairman of Eicher Group and Chairman of Mastek Limited. Also, Ms. Charulata Ravi, a Managing Director of Accenture, columnist and educationalist. Also, I take this opportunity to welcome all MMA members from all over Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. Also, invitees and guests from IMA Ahmedabad Alumni Association and other partner organizations, and the large number of participants from all over India who was already joined online for this evening. Also, I take this opportunity and also say that I'm delighted to share that MMA has been adjudged the best management association in the country for the last 12 years by All India Management Association in a recognition of his phenomenal contribution through numerous activities for management, professionals, entrepreneurs, students, and the public at large. Also, especially during the pandemic, also in the last 18 months, almost it's been daily some program is happening in MMA. It's a wide range of online events, and also now we have started the hybrid ones. Also, in the last 18 months, almost 350,000 of participants who have participated in all these online sessions. Coming back to today's program, 50 years, it's a great milestone. Sir, most of the average age of the people who are watching also present may not be equivalent to the professional life what you put in your, be it a birthday or a marriage anniversary, the personal or professional, it's a 50 years is a very good landmark. So usually we call this as a golden jubilee. Then it's gold means it represents health, wealth, and success for the occasion. Also, this book, I have not read the book fully. Then I got the prelude. This book brings the phenomenal journey of Mr. Kurien over the last 50 years as a successful management professional. Also, it says that once he was being questioned by a scribe, which is most important in life, the journey or the destination? He answered by saying that it's a company. It says that what kind of relationship which he builds, that's what he has described in this book. Also, he summed up very beautifully the value of how the relationship is important for running an organization. Also, it's especially for this young professionals, it's a treasure of knowledge for every reader and also the professionals who are budding entrepreneurs, bringing out relevant lessons for all of us. This evening, we look forward to the insights from Mr. Kurien on various aspects of professional and personal life. I also once again welcome all the distinguished guests and delegates and thousands of viewers who are already watching online all over the globe watching this program live. Wish you all the best and let's have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajkumar. Now it's my proud privilege to introduce Dr. K.C. John. In fact, Dr. K.C. John doesn't need introduction to MMA audience because we have done a lot of events together. Again, K.C. John has been a great source of support, inspiration to MMA. But just to, whenever I get an opportunity, I shouldn't miss it to introduce Dr. John, then only he'll take care of me later properly. He's over 30 years of, John navigates actively as an educator, coach, mentor, entrepreneur, and successfully offered course design thinking, building innovative, sustainable business and entrepreneurship, MBA and executive MBA and much more. Currently, John is engaged in institution building, a process that would lead world-class business school to Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education Research. Successfully exited 3 of his startups, which were acquired in high multiple trade sales strategic by investors, led post-merger integration, and also worked as a global visionary thought leader to conceptualize sustainable development programs in many organizations, including the World Bank Foundation and helped by the World Bank. The unifying theme of the career spanning over 30 years in a diverse range of sectors is innovation and entrepreneurship. John earned his doctorate in management from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. And now I'll request John will be taking forward this evening discussion as a moderator, as the lead. He will lead the conversation with the author, other distinguished dignitaries who are here. And once again, I have the privilege to request all the IMA Alumni Association, other dignitaries who have come, special invitees, do come to MMA, keep watching. We have some phenomenal facilities in our library, phenomenal e-books and a lot of videos, excellent audiobook. Idea is come engage with us. Your association means a lot to us and valuable to us. Now I request Mr. John to take it forward. Mr. John.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. George Rajkumar, for a very thoughtful welcome address. Greatly appreciate your presence and the thoughts which you shared with us. Group Captain Biji Kumar, it's great to be back here at Madras Management Association. We have been all cooped up for last 2 years, and we have been waiting for this opportunity. Thanks for getting us here, and we hope that we could collaborate with you to bring together some meaningful programs for you, right? All of us talk about finding the new normal. And what we could work with you is to help the entire esteemed member organizations of MMA to find how to discover the new normal. So we will talk about that. It's my proud privilege to first invite Preeti and Rashmi up in the dais so that you can share the bouquet to all the panelists here. Please come over. Please come here. Yeah. Come. So let me introduce the 2 young ladies. They are daughter and granddaughter of our author, Mr. Biji Kurien. The bouquet. No, the bouquet. So Rashmi, let's start with the lady on the dais, Miss Charu. Thank you. Let's look at Mr. George Rajkumar. And Mr. Sandilya. Thank you so much, Preeti and Rashmi. It's my privilege to anchor the book launch event for Mr. Biji Kurien. I was hoping that he would have set a record at 80 years young, he is debuting his memoir, right? And we hope that many other batchmates and followers would start looking at that, right? And create the book. I had the privilege of not only reviewing the book as a pre-publication, you can imagine my trials and tribulations of going through all the chapters, 531 pages. Biji wanted me to read each word of the 531 before I wrote my review comment. So that's great. And the way I look at half a century and still at Crease, a journey of 50 years plus years of a management professional, is the following. When a successful CEO like Biji dipped his pen on the ink, enthusiastic book buyers would make the jotting bestsellers. And we have plenty of books outside there. You could buy it and get it autographed, and we are also grateful that the publisher of the book, Satyamukti, is here. But many of us readers would believe that top achieving executives are as capable of writing useful book as managing big businesses. And what Mr. Biji Kurien has proved is writing long 531 pages book memoir is a product of long introspection. Business memoir requires distilling insights through deep introspection of long years of overcoming business challenges, competitors, investors, and innovating business model to stay relevant. And what you will find in the book is all of them and more, because he has spent the entire pandemic thinking about it and writing about it. Most probably, half a century and still at the Crease is the first business memoir emerging from the early batches of first generation of IAMs. Biji was a gold medalist, as you know, 68 batch, and we are fortunate to have two eminent panelists, Ms. Charu, who has known Biji from his Kolkata days, and I did hear them exchanging some bhalobashe language, right? And we have Mr. Sandilya, who has been a compatriot of Biji and graduated in 1969. So Mr. Sandilya is currently the group chairman of Eicher Group and as well as a non-executive chairman for Mastek, which is a pretty leading IT consulting services. Ms. Charu is the managing director of Accenture. She has flown all the way from Hyderabad, and that shows the kind of loyalty she has for Biji, right? So, what we have planned today is very simple. We would have an opening remark from the author initially, and then we will request Shiv Kumar to come and open and unveil the book and launch it. And then the two panelists would come and share their reflections on the book in terms of what they think the book is all about and what authors, as they have known, would show about. And then what we decided, we did a pre-planning exercise. All IMF folks would spend more time planning the event rather than executing it, right? So we planned it, and we said that instead of me hogging all the time with the panelists during question answers, we will allow the audience to raise questions, both those who are in person as well as those who are participating through the online. And group captain is pretty good at moderating all those questions, right? So I would moderate only the in-person question, and you would ensure that all folks who are taking care and participating through the panel would be addressed kind of stuff. Without much ado, I present the author, Biji Kurien.
Thank you, Dr. John, for that introduction. I think it was much easier to write 550 pages than stand here and introduce the book. You know, a lot of my colleagues have always asked me, why don't I write a book of all my experiences? Essentially because they thought that it would be a good guide to young managers and those who are doing management in institutions. I always said that I took an early retirement from my job in Berger Paints to get into a job which had no retirement age. And therefore I kept on saying, but I'm working still, and therefore I don't have the time, which was more that I didn't have the inclination rather than I didn't have the time. Now, as I was approaching the Sahasra Chandra, what is that called? Sahasra Chandra, it's called, Darshan, Sahasra Chandra Darshan, which is 1,000 moons that you see. And as I was approaching that, I told Mr. Sabirinath Nair, who was the CEO of Skillberry, where I was mentoring him. And I also was acting as the chief operating officer there. I told him that, from April, I will not be available other than once a month on a pro bono basis. And I also gave notice to my office, which was in Diners Business Services, in December, the 3 months notice saying that I'll quit at the end of March. Didn't know anything about lockdown in those days. But with the lockdown, I had my office in the home, and then I ran out of the excuse of not having the time to write. So what did I do? With the lockdown, the first 2 or 3 months I spent in terms of trying to find out how to carry on your work on a remote basis. Learn how to operate the Zoom, how to operate the Google Meet, the WebEx, and you name it, everybody came out with something or the other which would help them to get my advice on a remote basis. We also had to get tutored into Bartan, Jadu, and Pochna, which is the BJP, because we couldn't have the maids coming in being of a vulnerable age, and therefore we had to attend to all the things at home. So with all these, I spent about 4 or 5 months of the lockdown, and then I decided that I would be at my home office at 9 o'clock every morning. What would I do other than maybe write? So I started on the writing, but since I had not kept any records of what I have been doing, most of the writing had to be done from memory. And since I was writing on strategy and implementation of strategies, a lot of details had to be gone into, and you will notice that in the book when you read it. I said I shouldn't be making boo-boos in the details that I've done. So I had to contact a lot of my ex-colleagues to get the details of the strategy implementation. That gave me the opportunity of contacting people I hadn't contacted for maybe 15, 20 years, all the way from Canada in the west to New Zealand in the east, and Finland in the north to Australia in the south. So that's how I managed to get a lot of the information that I needed for my book. So where did my career start? I said 50 plus. I actually started working in 1963 when I completed my electrical engineering, which of course could explain my shocking behavior. But then I decided that I won't write about that period. I would rather write about the period after I graduated from IIM Ahmedabad, which was in 1968. And I said I'll write up to 2020, which is 52 years, so it is 50 plus years and therefore half a century, and still at the Crease because I'm still on the advisory board of Indian Paint Association, on the Paints and Coating Skill Council, and also on the advisory board of an Australian company which is into a startup, technical startup in Australia. So that's why I'm still at the Crease. So the title came to me on that basis, half a century and still on the Crease. Right, what was the objective of my writing the book? As I said, essentially to brief the younger managers or those who are in the management institutions on how to look at formulating strategy and also to look at implementing those strategies. One way of doing that would have been to go into a theoretical exposition of strategy formulation and strategy implementation. But I said I won't do that. I will instead talk about all the things that I have done during those 50 plus years and let the reader cull out what were the basis on which this was done. And since I graduated from IIM Ahmedabad, where the pedagogy was essentially on case studies, and in mostly case studies, people try to answer the questions that were given at the end of the case. But as soon as a participant answered the questions, some of the others said, they started questioning the answers. And some of us who were even smarter started questioning the questions itself. So the case study method was very good in terms of questioning the answers and questioning the questions. Case study has a lot of advantages in the sense that when you are given a situation and there are two people looking at it, they won't look at it the same way. There will be always difference on the same situation or a situation in future or a situation at a different context. And that's the way it happened in Ahmedabad. When one case was being discussed and one of the participants made an analysis of what the problem was, the professor said, "You are right." Another participant came with an analysis which was completely opposite to what the first one did. And the professor said, "You are right." So the third participant said, "But sir, they were contradicting each other." And he said, "You are right too." Because that's the beauty of the case method. There is no one single answer in terms of the solution that you can have for a case method. So where did I start after my graduation? I started as a marketing executive in Asian Paints. Fortunately, because I had earlier commercial experience of 3 or 4 years, I didn't have to start as a management trainee, which means the lowest rung of being a manager in a company. And within a year's time, I was given an independent assignment as a branch manager of all places in Chennai, called the Madras branch of Asian Paints, which was almost the last branch that they had started at that time. And being a new branch, in terms of market share, it was an also-ran branch. My brief from my boss was, you got to make Asian Paints a force to reckon with in the paint industry. I did that in 3 years' time and was offered by a competitor. Said, "You have done this in the Madras branch area. Why don't you come and do it on an all-India basis?" And that company was completely different in terms of ethos, culture, and the kind of shares it had in the market. In Asian Paints, we used to have the directors coming to the office dhoti clad. Whereas in this one, which is British Paints, everybody had to be suited booted, including the youngest managers there. So the culture was totally different. But I learned a few things in that. As a marketing executive, I was doing things on my own. As a branch manager, I was doing things along with people. And in the job that I was in British Paints, which was marketing manager for all India, it was doing things through people. So you have 3 levels at which you change your methods of working. I also came to understand that there are only 2 types of people who contribute to the success of a particular company. And one set of people is the customers who are willing to give their money in exchange for the products that you are selling. And the other set of people are the employees who provide those products. So that's what brought me to the levels at which I wanted to work as a marketing manager. And within 8 years of my being there, I was promoted to become the chief executive, which was 12 years from the passing out from IIM Ahmedabad, which was perhaps the fastest that anybody became a CEO of an MNC. Yeah, but what happened there was that while I was made the so-called leader, I found that to become a head of department, which I was, in the British companies, you had to be at least 50 plus, and very often in the mid-50s. And so most of my colleagues were in the mid-50s. And here was I, half my age of today, when I was 40, being made the CEO of the company. And the most important learning in that was that you are a leader not because somebody made you the leader, but because those who were led were willing to be led by you. So your leadership depends on the people who give you that patta, as they call it, as leader of the company. So this learning helped me considerably in my work with Indian Paint Association and in my work with the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, 2 sections in the book where I have done this work, and in both of them I was elected president. Why I'm saying it was a lesson worthwhile having? Because you couldn't get anything done there on the basis of either your knowledge or your power. You had to persuade people to do things for you. And that stood me in good stead even after I took the early retirement and set up my own consultancy, because you could not get things implemented other than through persuasion, because you neither had the power nor, while you had the knowledge to persuade them, the knowledge was not what made people do what you had wanted them to do for you. A lot of my time that I spent in the 50 plus years, about 50% of that, 22 years to be exact, was in the paint industry. So people in the paint industry will find a little bit more than people in the other industries in terms of the history of the paint industry from the 60s onwards, where I saw the other day notice from one of the newer paint companies saying that they did 100 crores in 1 month. That Asian Paints did in October 1968. Right? So it was a question of where did you learn all this from the paint industry, and people in the paint industry will find it useful. I must thank MMA and IIM Alumni Association for having this hybrid launch of the book. Essentially because this is the first time I'm out of the home after the house arrest, as I would always called it. I'm on parole for today. And I hope this is just the start of being on parole in the future as well. So essentially my thanks are due to the two associations which have sponsored this. I must thank Dr. John very personally, because he did as he himself mentioned, had to go through my book before it was published and write the review of my book. I could pull rank on Sandilya because I was 1 year senior to him in Ahmedabad to come as a panel member. And I should also thank Charulata, who also did the pre-publication review of my book and came all the way from Hyderabad to be here present in person for this launch. Thank you very much. I would now call Mr. Shivakumar to come and launch the book. I must thank Mr. Shivakumar because he was the one that gave me the last push to get my book published. Because when he asked me what was I doing during the lockdown, I said, well, I'm writing something. He said, are you planning to publish it? I said, you know, it's very difficult to find a publisher to publish your rantings as you write it. He said, no, I will get you a publisher. And he got me the publisher, and that it was published there. And if you also saw that he was opening it, he's very good at string pulling.
Thank you, Biji. As a true IMA alumni, he spelled out his goal, the structure, the process, the system he followed, and the output. And he gave, as a great marketing person, only the teaser of the book. You need to read it to figure out what all things has gone inside. Thank you so much, Biji. I now request Ms. Charulata to come over and share your reflections on the author and the book. As I said earlier, Ms. Charulata is the MD of Accenture, and he is a great columnist and writer.
Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me here. It didn't even take me a few seconds to say yes for multiple reasons. The reasons are all here on the stage as well. But also because this is so close to my heart, it's my hometown. I've never grown up here, but I'm very close to it, and this is where my home is. You know, when I was reading the book, and I think I read about 650 pages. I don't know, you said 550. Then I realized I probably went back to a lot of pages over and over again, right? Because they were interesting. I could relate to a lot of it. And a lot of learnings when you go through some of those pages again and again. And when I looked at the title, I was thinking to myself that, and this was on the flight this morning, that maybe if you joined our cricket team, the last couple of months could have been a little different. Half a century at the Crease, and still at the Crease. And I would also equate it to, you know, for those of you who are scared of reading these thick, fat books, don't worry. I was one of them as well. But I think it's one of those books like the Gita. It's a huge analogy I'm making, but you can pick up from any chapter. And I mean that because I've kind of read through it, and I know some of the chapters that I went back to almost question why, what was it, what was the strategy, why did he do it, etc. You could just pick up any chapter, read it from wherever, finish it wherever, and you will get something out of it. So it's not one of those books you need to begin today and end in the next 10 days, right, or next 5 days. I would also want to say that there were multiple, and not quoting from the book at this point, but multiple lessons, life lessons I have learned in my interactions with Mr. Kurien. So many life lessons. And I want to quote from some of those early days in which I encountered him and his teams in Calcutta. That's where I grew up, in Kolkata, as we call it. And my first interaction with him was very interesting. Firstly, he didn't hand out any business cards, right? And I realized that, and that first day that I met him, there were 3 lessons I picked up, which are still dear to my heart. He didn't hand out business cards, and he was with his team. And I was what we call in the advertising agency world a flunky, and I was really young, and I was one of those flunkies who was carrying everything with me and all the bags. And so you're made to carry things more than speak. Those were the days. But it took me some time to understand who he was to start with, right? Because he was letting the team speak, and I always thought a leader spoke first at that time. When you're young, you think about these things. And when he allowed everyone's points of view to come out, right? And we had actually presented a campaign to him. And I actually joined the advertising world as a writer, so I was partly writing that campaign and kind of working with the teams on the strategy. And when we presented the campaign to him, a couple of people were a little worried. And I know the comments that happened there was, but we've not done this before. This is not in the same tone as what Berger has done, etc. And towards the end, he goes, that's the reason we should do it. So to me, there was that one big lesson. First lesson that day was, he didn't hand out the business cards. You're not a leader because you say so. And I think he mentioned that. The second was, when no one has done something, to be able to dare to do it was the second thing that came to my mind. And the third, I think, which is even more relevant in today's times, and it surprised me when I think about it that someone in those days was thinking about it, was a big lesson in diversity and inclusion. And it's a little bit of a lengthy story, but I'll talk about it. When we finished the meeting, right, and I was, of course, and we thought we had a very successful meeting, so everybody was celebrating, rejoicing, and all of that, and I was carrying these massive pieces of layouts, as we call it, and big bags, and falling all over it, and I couldn't. But because everyone, and trust you me, I was the only girl in that entire group from both sides, and when we were approaching the elevator, and I was stumbling all over it, I think everybody in that whole excitement from both sides, I must say, forgot that, hey, this little girl was trying to kind of stumble over it. So he came to pick it all up, right? And I think that's when it kind of dawned on everyone else, saying, oh my God, what have we done? So everyone came forward to pick up the things for me, and he said, no, I'll do that. I'll pick it up for her. So he carried it all the way down in the elevator, and I think he took the stairs or whatever. He carried it all the way down, right, to kind of look out for everyone in the team, irrespective of what level they're in, to make it all really inclusive was a huge lesson that I took back as well. And these are, things which are not in the book, right? So maybe I could write a book on him as well. And the other thing I was thinking about is, I think this is covered in a couple of the chapters there, chapter 13, 14, I think, where, there were situations when the industrial environment wasn't as friendly, and there were situations to deal with unions, and, it was a city which was kind of really kind of piping up with those kind of things. And to be able to lead a team that comes out of it with such tremendous success, yet be disruptive, right? Yet lead into new avenues and lead the whole team into new avenues. Those were some of the things that even today we talk about in our organization to our people. We follow it, right? And when I saw all of this, and I went to him one day and I said, Mr. Kurien, I need your advice, right? General advice, and coach me, I need your advice. And I think he made the biggest mistake of his life that day. I'm sorry I'm saying that, but that was a big mistake, I think. He said, surround yourself with the best coaches. And he made the mistake. I said, okay, you're on. So here we are, even today actually, I mean, when I need lessons in coaching, lessons in anything that I think I'm kind of toying with 2-3 different ways to approach it, he's my go-to person, and I do ask him very often for that advice that is very precious, and I know it's always meaningful. And it's given with a very unbiased view, right? And you will see some of the stories in those chapters where he's taken some of the decisions in a very unbiased way in terms of what is important for the business, what's important for the people, right? And I'm sorry, but on the flight, I did kind of, write down a couple of things which I did want to share. So I'm going to take, am I good for time? I just don't want to talk about all the time. Okay. So a couple of things that, again, about him, which seemed like important things I could share here with everyone, was the spontaneity, right? And you heard him today. I mean, he's got no speeches written out, etc., right? The spontaneity with which he doesn't just speak but also acts is the tone, I think, and I believe, of the entire book as well, right? What he's written there, the points of view he's given there is unabashed. It's the story as it needs to be told, right? And I believe I've not seen a better storyteller than Mr. Kurien. I absolutely have not. And the book feels like such a light reading in spite of having so many pages. I would definitely say go through it. It's a story within a story within a story. It's incredible reading, incredible learnings, and I think I stand to gain a lot by even going through it, and could be one more read that I might have of the favorite pages that I've marked in the book, in fact. And the other part is when he moved from there to even Bengal Chamber of Commerce, right? And as part of the agency, we were working very closely with the Bengal Chamber as well. And I was a senior flunky then. I moved up a little bit in my rank, so I was still a flunky. When we were sharing, it was a huge audience, and he was on the dais with multiple people, and we were sharing the concept of the first very large, probably one of the largest industrial exhibitions for Bengal Chamber that was being put up. Very successful one, I'm told later when we looked at some numbers. And we had done this massive mock-up and all that. You know how we are in agency world. We're storytellers. So we made this entire mock-up piece, and the 2 senior people who were supposed to present got pretty intimidated by the number of people on the dais and senior people like him and everyone, and they were like, oh my God, what do we do? I mean, have we got the stuff right? So they included me in sharing that, and while we were presenting to Mr. Kurien and his team, again, we actually went there with some ideas which might have seemed a little bizarre. Can we do it? Is it possible to produce? Is it possible to implement? Cost and everything. None of those questions were being asked, right? They looked at it, and he was leading that discussion to say, I love it because it has never been done before, right? All over again, the whole lesson of never be afraid to do something that has never been done before. And I think even today it continues. Never been done before. Write a book during the pandemic. How many of us have thought about it, right? Many of us just sat back and said, firstly, we worried about getting locked up inside the house, right? We thought about so many things. And sure, many things didn't go right. But how many of us really used that time to do something very, very different? It's still not late. And I think if I have to draw one really important lesson from there is, which he would always say, that, there is always time. I've heard him say that a couple of times. There's always time to do things you want to do. And I've always wondered, someone as busy as him, doing so many things, how do you find time for people who knock on your doors? Someone like me for advice and stuff. There's always time is what I've always heard him say. So with that, I really want to thank you so much for all of the lessons that hold so good for me. And, I share that with our teams every day. And this book is going to be priceless as I pick some of those lessons from there and share it with everyone. So thank you so much. I do have some questions for you, which I will ask later maybe, but I'll wait for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Charulata. You saw that she is a great marketing consultant, and she narrated a story with all emotion, all feeling, and finally she motivated all of you to go and buy and read the book so that you could look at it much more seriously. Thank you very much. May I request Mr. Sandilya to come and share his reflections on the book and the individual.
Thanks a lot, Dr. John. I must thank Madras Management Association and also Biji for having given me the opportunity to be part of this panel discussion, the launch of his book, Half a Century and Still at the Crease. Very interesting. As Biji said, I had known him. He was 1 year senior to me. I have to bow to him. As he said, he can take the liberty. But he caught me on really unawares because I was requested by Kiran Karnik, his classmate, to be at the book launch function which was organized by MMA on the decisive decade. And Biji said, listen, you're going to be in my book launch as well. So that's it. So he had kind of forced me into taking this responsibility. Great. And I think before getting into this, and I think Biji is person, as all you know, that is a gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad, 68 batch, has been there, done that, been CEO of a company, been in the corporate world, has been in the consulting business, he's done exceedingly well in the consulting business, and tried everything, and he has also been in the social sector in terms of Bengal Chamber of Commerce, Indian Paints Association. I've been in touch with him off and on. I mean, not that we were regularly in touch with, but we have been, when he was in the Paints Council, he wanted some membership. I was in the Board of National Skill Development Corporation. He approached me and said, listen, I want something done. Same thing in Skill, where he said, you must go and see what Sabri is doing in his company, very innovative stuff, and it can be implemented in many companies. So he kind of uses his network to ensure that we are there, and he constantly uses them. But I must reflect a little bit on the IIM Ahmedabad experience. Many of you may not even know that IIM was not very well known. He was in the 3rd batch and I was in the 4th batch. And infrastructure was very, very frugal. We didn't have classrooms. We had sheds for classrooms. No tables. We used to have chairs with a small little writing table on the side. And we used to use that for writing, keeping our books on the floor and managing all that. The library was in a shed. And we didn't have the dormitories. We were living in the professor's quarters. And he was in room 418. I was in 307 house. We had a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses. We used to kind of manage. In the 2nd year, we got dormitories, but he never experienced a dorm life at all. The dorm was having only a mess that we used to go there for our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But what did it teach us? Apart from the case study method that Biji referred to, which is very, very unique, because in the country, except Ahmedabad, Calcutta had a different curriculum, different mode of education, pedagogy. Jamnalal Bajaj Institute, the other one, which is, there were only 3 institutes were known at that time, and they had a very different pedagogy. But IIM Ahmedabad followed the Harvard Business School model of having case study, in which was very, very unique, and we learned a lot. And it taught us how to look at things in a very, very different way. So that was the situation there. It taught us that how do you take things as they come, rather than expecting a real good infrastructure. Whatever is that, you go to a company, you go there, these things are not all right, situation is not okay, but take it in the stride and move forward and see what you can do there, rather than kind of complaining. I mean, that really, I thought, one of the lessons that we all learned in IIM Ahmedabad, and it was very, very useful. Coming to the book, I think I must say that, though I have not read the book totally, I mean, like Charu and Dr. John had the privilege of going through it I did browse through a few of the chapters, and as Charulata said, that you can pick up anywhere, you can start anywhere, you can end anywhere. You get lots of nuggets in the book. Easy to read, very simple. It's actually a journey that he has gone through. The entire journey is kind of covered in this. It's partly chronological, partly not chronological, because he's covered a variety of things. And I would strongly recommend practitioners as well as students to take this book and read it. And I'm going to read it fully. Commit that, because I've got so much of interest in it, and I started going through details. Let me just share with you some of the nuggets that I got out of the book. And I think book launch, what I could kind of look at is that what is it that we pick up? There could be a number of things. I think it's just very difficult to count and put them in a short 5-6 minutes of talk. One of the things that Biji refers in the very beginning is on networking. The importance of networking in any kind of leadership position is very, very crucial, and I firmly believe in it, and I, in a way, kind of practice it as well, and it's been very useful. He refers to it in this first job that he took up, which after IIM Ahmedabad, he took up the branch manager job, and he says, I used the network that I had before joining the company and started connecting people, contacting them to find out a lot of answers for my questions and found solutions. Come next in terms of a business environment where he was with a paint company, this company called construction companies or construction chemicals that he was looking at, Dr. Chandra, some person that you have referred to. And one fine morning he said, that, listen, we need to look at how do we get this business. Asian Paints were looking for entering the business, and so Biji had his contact with Ashwin Dani, the chairman of the company. And he was told by Dr. Chandra that Susim Datta, the former chairman of Hindustan Lever, was the chairman of this company, and he knew him as well because of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. I also had the privilege of knowing him because he was on our supervisory board of Eicher, so I had known Susim. Extremely nice person, very open. So he was given a mandate that if whatever Susim Datta decides, we will abide by his decision. So he immediately gets Susim Datta to come all the way to Mumbai to meet Ashwin Dani and Jaladani. So that's his networking capability, that he could kind of influence people based on his knowledge, his experience, and get them to come and get into a business discussion, which is meaningful. At the end of the day, the deal got struck. And I think that's, a great story of networking. Come next to the issue of CPS, and I think where he was also ultimately chief executive, but initially he was consulting. That's a time that he had a bit of a challenge that the global CEO, Arto, I don't know his full names, from Sweden, was coming in, and so Biji thought that, as he mentioned in his initial speech, that customers is the one who kind of gives us life, and they are the one who are fundamentally responsible for our success in business. So he said, I would like Arto to meet some customers. But Arto was shocked. How can I meet customers? I'm coming for 3 days, and I've got to go to Daman, I've been here, lots of meetings, and where will be the time? Biji, in his own style, convinced him, no, don't worry, we don't have time to meet individually, but you must meet customers because that's very relevant and it's important. So why don't we meet them over dinner? Arto said, why dinner? But why will people come for a person whom they don't know? I mean, I'm coming from Sweden, they don't know anybody, why should they come? That will leave it to me, I'll manage. That's what he did in terms of networking. And he, in fact, invited people from Delhi and Calcutta to come all the way to Mumbai. But how will they come? They may have their own compulsions. But he requested them, listen, why don't you do your monthly visit to Bombay on a day, 6th of May as a date that he mentioned in the book, and say that you come in the afternoon, so in the evening you can participate in the party. And they did come. Again, networking capability, that knowing that what can we and how do we influence them to come. And when he was just doing that, the last bit of thing happened that Ashwin Dani said, listen, I can't come because my son's wedding is due and I'm preparing for that and I only attend half a day office. Biji comes with another googly. He said, Ashwin, why don't you have that half a day in the afternoon instead of morning so that you can finish your office and come from the office and drive into the hotel and join the party. And so he did. So his ability to influence the chairman of a company, Asian Paints, where he has worked earlier for a very short while, but still his relationship was met. So I think that's something which he has few examples have quoted in terms of how networking has been extremely important for managing. The second thing which I would like to highlight is on openness on managing tough situations. He didn't take anything for granted. The status quo is not necessarily the right thing. So he was questioning everything from fundamental principles. And I think that the initial branch manager's role, the way he looked at the logistics business, the retailers' problems, and say, how do we solve this problem from fundamentals? So when I look at the book, he has actually looked at the thing that we learned at IIM Ahmedabad, is a logical thinking process, logical thinking ability. He has used both of them, and he has actually given the nuggets of how he has gone through systematically what are the problems that are being faced, how do we solve those problems, and found those solutions, and very innovatively went through solutions. The other thing which he has demonstrated is perseverance. I think as a leader, one of the very important things is we face lots of challenges. It's very difficult to explain because that's something which we do in a day-to-day life. There's something or the other keeps happening. But if you have a passion for what you've decided, what you want to do, you must persevere with it. And he has demonstrated the perseverance also in some of the examples that are there. And that I'll take the social sector for this purpose, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. And he was in charge of Calcutta Eicher, some kind of a group that he was chairing. And it was basically cleaning up Calcutta and doing a lot of improvement in the area. The challenge he faced was funding. Who will give me funding? So he said, let me approach Rusi Modi, this co-chairman managing director, and they'll fund with a lot of funds and they must be able to give me some money. Why not? He goes to Rusi Modi and goes to Bombay to meet him, and I think he goes and cajoles him, convinces him. But he puts a reverse condition. Biji, I'm willing to give you funds, but you have to do something which I've been passionate about. I want to illuminate Victoria Memorial. Can you help me do that? He said, what do I do? How do I manage that? So Biji said, okay, I'll do it. Take a challenge. Comes back to Calcutta, goes up finding out who is the person, who is the trustee, finds that the chairman of the trust of the Victoria Memorial was a person whom he had known earlier in some other context, so again networking. And he went and convinced him, and that person said, listen, it's a very good idea. It is my responsibility. I'll get my trustees to agree with it. So he got that clearance. He went back to Rishi Modi and tells him, he says, listen, what Tatas could not do with all the clout that we have in Calcutta because of our presence, you have been able to do. Biji, thank you very much, and kudos to him. I think that's the kind of thing that he said in terms of. The last point I want to mention, and I'll just sit down because I think time is limited, we've got question and answer, is empathy. That's very critical for leaders because you are working with the team, you are getting the team to deliver, you're not the only person who are getting things done. Leader has had to have followers who are also willing to respect. So he looks at the employees, one of the case studies that he has given in that is in terms of what kind of problem employees face when they come to the office, whether in terms of timing or in terms of facilities. He has looked at them, talked to them, and come out with innovative solutions without compromising on the rules of the company, whether in terms of flexi timing or in terms of making arrangements for them in the Chennai office, which is high temperature. Because the company had a rule, comparing Bangalore as an office is a much bigger office, Chennai is a smaller office. But then the point is, it's not the size of the office that matters, it's the condition of the thing, the temperature that they work in. So it's empathy for people, the people who work with you, taking care of their requirements. I think that's also very well spelled out. So this is small nuggets, but if I had to go on, I can go on. There are a number of learnings. I would recommend that all of you read the book and learn from it and all practice with students. And with that, I'll stop, and I think we have to have a question answer session. I don't want too much of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sandilya. You could look at that in spite of long years away from the campus, the feeling for each other, and the time Mr. Sandilya has taken to go through the book and interpret it from his way. That's fascinating. Thank you so much. We are getting into a little bit of question-answer sessions. I would request all of you to get ready, and before I allow you to ask, let me ask some juicy questions to Biji Kurien. Biji, you, in your book, in the first chapter, explained how you wandered into the paint industry, joined a family business. My question is, does Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, prepare you to take care of a family business?
Well, not exactly. I always used to say that in IIM Ahmedabad, I learned management. But working for Asian Paints, a family company, I learned business. So, which is very different. Right. So, being employed in a family concern, you learn a lot of tricks of the trade, which you don't learn in a management institute.
That's right. There is a trend now to start a family business program, MBA, right? So I was wondering, what kind of advice would you give to those who wants to pursue a family business management program? Should it be people who are not belonging to the family should pursue it, or should the program only invite those who are in the family who wants to be the heir to the family business, they should join it? What's your?
Yeah, in fact, one of the big advantages of Asian Paints was when I joined, is that I was the first MBA to join Asian Paints. They were willing to look at professional managers coming in, whereas earlier they used to have salesmen who grew up and became branch managers and then later became sales managers and so on. Apart from that, they were also the first in this country to have their own computer. The 1901
in those days. And that was run by one of his classmates. Yeah. So essentially, whenever someone from the government came to visit the executive director, he would call me for some reason or the other, and then say, oh, you know, Mr. Kurien, oh, he's from IIM Ahmedabad, he's a gold medalist. So that was big patta for them to say that, you know, they were employing the gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad. Yeah. Just like when they had the computer, they would say, oh, we also have a computer. Right, so there are a lot of things that a family business would do, which I think we have to learn from, that they are willing to make changes when it becomes necessary. But if you look back and say, when was the first time they had a non-family member as managing director? It was it was 2010 when they had the first non-family member as managing director. That was PM Murthy, who trained under me here in Chennai when he was from the Calcutta Institute of Management.
Mr. Sandilya, after MBA, you also went and joined a family business group, the famous DCM group, right? You took a detour, went and worked for Union Carbide for a few years, and then went back to a lesser-known family business. Very well. Eicher Group. And you were instrumental in transforming the entire Eicher Group along with the owner initially. And now your role is to prepare the heir to take the mantle, right? So you are seeing a family business from inside out. How would you describe your challenges right now when you're preparing the next generation of family business members to take over? And we are aware that there was quite a lot of issues recently where Siddharth's compensation was not agreed, and I'm sure you managed the entire thing pretty well. So I want to understand from you, as an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, what kind of challenges do you foresee for yourself in terms of helping transitioning of the entire family from one generation to another?
First, let me correct. Yes, DCM for about a year, then I was in a multinational Union Carbide for 5 years, and then moved to Eicher, is a very, very small 3 crore company. Moving from an American company into a family-owned company was very different. But why I moved into that company is a major risk that I took in my life. I mean, I think now it's what? 1975 I joined. It's so many years that I've been there with them. 47 years, not very long, only 47 years. So that decision was basically based on the individual, Mr. Vikram Lal, who was the promoter. He was still called technical director, not even managing director. His father was still the chief. The way he approached the entire business and the way he had his ambition was something which kind of connected, and the ethics and value system of the company. Sure. And then the company has grown from a 3 crore company to a multi-thousand crores company. I think what is important is not family business. We can't put it in one brush. It's very, very different. Eicher is a very unique family business company. Mr. Vikram Lal, who was the promoter way back, had the first professional chief executive in Subodh Bhargav. He was there for about 2.5 years. And 2000, I had the privilege of becoming the group chairman, chief executive for 6 years. I've retired in 2006. The 6 years were really marking for me because the company was into the worst ever losses in the history when I took over as the chairman. Then we worked with the whole system. Nothing that I have done I can claim as individual. It's all the team, it's all we had something like 10, 12 businesses at that time in the group. And except for one of them, most of them were in losses. I mean, so we need to kind of really turn around the company. The support that the owner gives you and give the freedom that he gives you, and that I think is important, that not all families do. I think we should understand that very, very different. And it's a very professionally managed company. Therefore, I had a lot of freedom as the chairman of the company. Very rarely there was interference from the family on like it. Mr. Siddharth Lal, who now you're talking about, he's already taken over. I mean, from 2006, I stepped down as an executive chairman. Since then, I've been a non-executive chairman, so I'm not involved in operations at all. And in our company, it's a very clear thing. Once you get out, you don't involve in operations. Mr. Bhargav did that. Mr. Vikramlal did that very clearly. He never involved in operations and getting into details. And I never got involved in operations. In fact, I never visited plants after it unless they invite me for some function. So I think we need to have the delineation in looking at some of these. So if the family can give professionals the responsibility and they take care of the ownership, it'll be fine. But Siddharth Lal himself is a qualified professional and he took on. He's very passionate about things. We did a lot of things in terms of focusing on the business, only commercial vehicles and motorcycles, and other businesses we sold off and divested. And Siddharth Lal has been in the reins from 2006 since I retired. Now I'm a non-executive chairman. So I play a very different role in terms of mentoring the senior management, in terms of whatever questions they have, whatever advice they have. So I don't get involved in operations. I'm on the boards of quite a few other companies, so therefore I can't focus on one company in any case. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know I have answered your question.
Not at all. I guess that's pretty insightful. Thank you. Biji, you shifted from Madras to City of Joy, right? And you were involved in going and joining a competitor of Asian Paint. You looked at the commodity goods which British Paints were manufacturing. You termed this as mitti and putti, right? And what you did over the next 5 to 10 years was converting the commodity into a fast-moving consumer good. You ensured that you launched a series of new products. You launched for the paint industry the first branding exercise, the Luxor silk and the entire stuff. So if some of the young brand managers who are here, who are waiting to read your book, what advice would you give to the young managers here in terms of managing the brand, in terms of new product launch from your experience?
Yeah, if you read the book and read the Luxor silk story, you will realize that at that time, the paint companies used to advertise their brands. But if you remove the brand name, the advertisements look the same. You wouldn't see any difference. That's where I came to the conclusion that if you want to promote a brand, the brand should have a personality of its own. And you should be able to highlight that brand very clearly, and even if you didn't say anything about the brand name, people should know that it is that brand. For instance, Luxor silk, we did not even talk about painting. We said drape your walls with Luxor silk, because silk is used for draping. And we did not say that it is long-lasting or anything, because we said an emulsion should be long-lasting. Why do you have to keep saying that? So we kept on saying and connecting it with high levels of products and getting people to feel that it was a luxury product. We said when the bronze is chola, the walls are silk. When the carpet is Persian, the walls are Luxor silk. So much so that when we were given the Pegasus Award by Reader's Digest, the advertising agency of that of Digest was also the advertising agent for Shah Mahuja Daris. So he came and told me, you know what Shah Mahuja told me? He said, when the walls are silk, the Daris should be Shah Mahuja.
Thank you so much. Ms. Charulata, you are a marketing advisor to a large number of MNCs and emerging companies. My request to you is, if you were to apply Biji's framework to the contemporary market, where there is a constrained demand, there is a surplus installed capacity, there is a going digital which you are leading, and then there is an instant gratification which everybody is looking. Would you advise same framework, or would you help your clients to look at some new frameworks in terms of how to build brand, how to market their product in a very difficult environment?
I would probably draw upon a statement that he made when he was speaking, which is there are two people who make a business successful, right? One is the consumer and the other is our people. And I think that remains at the core of every success, no matter which market you go to, no matter what the environment is like, how it is changing. And even applying, said in half jest, but that analogy of the case studies, right? And how you interpret that, right? And from that point of view, it's an art. You interpret it in 3 different ways, and all 3 could be right. So I do feel that there is no one way to get to that end outcome that you're achieving, right? But the process around that needs to be strategic, needs to definitely have the consumer in focus. Without that, I think, without the insights of how differently is the consumer behaving today, and now with digital, we can actually get some really real-time understanding of the customer behavior, right? We don't have to rely on traditional research that takes about 3 months to 6 months to get that back to you because the consumer has changed and done something else and gone somewhere else. New platforms keep emerging, right? And it's no longer just physical products. It's a combination of physical products and service products. So I think if we keep our eye on the customer, how they're shifting their consumption patterns, their thinking, their behavior, and not so much by what they tell us in traditional research, which is often what you want to hear, but based on their behavior, we will get this right. So whether the market is a difficult market, easy market, I think being disruptive, innovative, all based on what data tells you and what the customer insights bring to you would be the only way to go. Short answer for now because there isn't so much time, but I'm sure there is more depth to that as well.
Let's get back to the author. Biji, looks like family business had a great impact on you. You converted a British conglomerate into family business and invited Vijay Mallya to take it over. And he was your chairman, right? Infant terrible of the family business. And when he was looking for a buyer, you persuaded the Dhingras to buy it over. And you had a magical spell on Vijay Mallya. The only condition Vijay Mallya put to Dhingra is ensure that the CEO comes and works for you. So we are all curious. What kind of magical spell did you?
Yeah, I suppose it all depends on how well you manage the company. And especially when the Dhingras were buying it, they had no clue on how to manage a publicly listed company. So they wanted the CEO to go with the purchase of the company.
Vijay Mallya famously quipped,
Yeah.
it's a North Indian Kirana shop owner who is buying it.
Yeah, for him it didn't matter as long as he was getting his money.
Money, that's
Yeah.
right.
So he was
No,
willing.
but I thought that you also cast your magical spell on Dhingras. They didn't want to relieve you when you wanted to take your premature retirement, right?
Yeah, but then that's a different story altogether. Yeah, because I said I need to get into a job where nobody is going to tell me it's time you're retired. So I could decide on my own as to when I wanted to retire.
Of course, Mr. Sandilya always talked about the secret sauce he has developed to manage the family business, right? And so do you have some more secret for managing the family owners?
Fundamentally, what makes you work in a family environment is that you're not doing anything which is in conflict with the family's interests. I think that's very important. I mean, I think it is, but at the same time, you're also working with a company for all the stakeholders, not just the promoters. And I think that's the point. It's the customer, as Biji said, it's very important to take care of them, your dealers, your vendors. So I think Eicher has a philosophy of ensuring that all the stakeholders are protected. So that signal comes from the top. I think is very important. If the value systems of the company are good, then people like us can also work in similar situations. And the entire team members also understand that the company is a no-nonsense company on certain matters. The value systems are very strict, sacrosanct. And if those kind of fundamentals are established in any family business, and the family also understand that they can depend on professionals to ensure that the business deliveries are done, then I think the magic will work. If there is any conflict between the expectations of the family and the professional managers, and there could be problems in terms of, and then you will have issues which keep happening in businesses we see day in and day out. Yeah?
Biji, before it became fashionable, you shifted the business from Bengal to Gujarat. Did you have the prescient knowledge that the chief minister of Gujarat would become a prime minister?
In any case, he was not the chief minister of Gujarat.
That's why I said that he would, right?
No, when I moved to Gujarat, he was not there at all in politics to the extent that he has been there later.
But you led a template for him to follow, right? Did he invite you to Prime Minister's office?
No. Essentially, we wanted to have a factory in the West. And Gujarat was the only choice because they were willing to give a lot of concessions.
Right. Mr. Sandilya, you have been involved in setting up lots of manufacturing plants across the country, right? For Eicher and others. Prime Minister Modi has been asking about Make in India, which has not taken off. If you were invited to advise the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, to streamline and strengthen Make in India, would you worry about location? Would you worry about the entire policies of tax reforms and incentives? Or what would you advise Mr. Piyush Goyal and his secretary in Department of Industry Promotion and Industry Trade?
Simple. Revamp your entire regulation, make it absolutely, really easy to operate. I think in India, we have plethora of regulations, plethora of laws, and every second day you have some notification or the other coming in. It's making business, not only cost of doing business is higher, it's also becoming a lot of hindrance. And people who want to really do something, invest, people invest because they want to also earn something out of it, in addition to contributing to society. But if we have to follow so much of regulations are important. I'm not saying regulations are not important. They're important. But if you have a knee-jerk reaction of coming with one fraud takes place, change the law, another fraud takes place, change the law, you keep on kind of doing it on a knee-jerk reaction, it only causes trouble and people have to only keep looking at it. Just yesterday I was reading that SEBI has come with further regulations on related party transactions and subsidiary companies which are there, they have to also report. I mean, it just goes on. There are problems. Instead of tackling the problem, instead of enforcing the laws that are in the country, we keep making more and more laws and creating confusion. So my simple answer would be make business simple, make your regulations easily interpretable, avoid ambiguities, and just leave the business to do business. Let the government not be in business. Absolutely. I think that's very critical. We all know IT industry is successful because government never got involved in it. And IT industry is really blossoming today. It's multiple, millions of dollars of revenue that they earn because there was no intervention. Wherever there have been intervention, there have been problems. I stop there. I think government should leave it to the industries to manage the business and not interfere. Thank you.
I'm going to stop, and I'm requesting all the present members to raise their question, and we will ask the panelists to respond.
Particularly to the other, sir. See, this title, the title.
Yeah, we are here.
The title sounds rather pessimistic, Half a century, still at the crease. That means you are yet to open the account, score the runs, And you said you have opened started the career in management in 1968. Okay, half a century over, but still at the crease means, long way to go. What is that you are expecting? What exactly you planned? And I think this book is on strategic management. So what type of strategy, so that, that takes you leaps and bounds. The company must elevate, grow in leaps and bounds. But still at the crease means strategy is not good enough. So what exactly you are going to talk about it?
Yeah, let me tell you what one of the my colleagues advised me was that why stop at half a century? I think you need to hit a century. So I'm trying for that, but God willing, I might still do it.
Long innings, right? Absolutely. Yes.
Mr. Kurien, hearty congratulations on your book. Really, this is the first time I'm meeting you, but I've been interacting with you only with the WhatsApp. I really admire the way you invited me for this meeting. Because of you, I'm here. Thoroughly enjoyed the entire interaction. But just only one question. This question has been asked to me from various forums. So I'm raising it to you. You have been in the industry for a very long time, especially in the manufacturing industry. I run a business which is basically into diversity and inclusion. At the factory, why women are not being employed at large numbers? At least, it should be even at least in the 2-digit numbers. Is there any idea that you could throw to us? Because the remaining years, we are at Avatar, we are trying to improve women's workforce participation at a large number. From your experience, can you throw some light how we could improve women's workforce participation in manufacturing industry? Thank you.
In the manufacturing industry, you mean? Yeah, to a large extent, in one of the stories that I mentioned about was with reference to how the employee collective bargaining went on. One of the things I told them was that people on the management side were not the same for every negotiations they had. But people on the labor side were the same people, and therefore it was in their interest to see that the company survived and grew so that they start at 20 and retire at 60 in the same company. For most of those people on the management side, it was a job, not a career. They were wedded to their profession rather than the company. Whereas for most of the employees, they are wedded to the company because they don't have much of a choice. So that has to be drilled into them in very soft manner, rather than the normal manner in which we tell you, you do it. That's not the way to do it.
Yes, Sunil.
Hi, Sunil Varghese, PGP 87. You've been a trailblazer for us right through in converting a commodity into silk.
Can you hold it a little closer?
Oh yeah, sorry, I never had a problem with my voice. One observation, the latest Aluminous issue talked of Mote, Professor Mote, making this distinction between management and business. And he said he was very clear that he wanted IIM to be a management school and not a business school. Is that why you had to go to a family business to learn business? That's my first question. And my second question is, you're the second Korean who's an icon of Indian industry. Varghese Kurien. Is there something in your surname which makes you special and unique? And can I change my name to Kurien too?
Yeah, like they say, if wishes were horses, beggars would fly. So, there is no point in having a different name if you are Sunil Varghese, right? Okay, so, I think being a Varghese, the other Kurien was a Varghese Kurien. So you have the right name, but in the wrong space. Yeah, I joined the family business only for one reason, that I wanted to be able to work in as many divisions as possible, rather than be confined to just sales or marketing or finance or something. And that you can get opportunity only in a family business.
Thank you, sir. Now, the number of questions come YouTube. We have over 700 viewers watching this program live. And I will try at least 1 or 2 questions. I think we have reached almost end of the time. So, okay, sir, with your permission? Yes. It was a question from a faculty from one of the education institutions. He says, sir, 1963 you are a graduate as engineer, 68 as IIM MBA. What's your thoughts of present MBA and word of advice to the young aspiring management student to be successful in their future endeavor?
Yeah, if you look at the present MBAs, especially from some of these institutions like IIM Ahmedabad, you have air-conditioned classrooms, you have, everybody has a laptop. In the days when we were there, we didn't even have a computer in the institute. We had to go to the, IR? PRL, to use the computer. Now, that is the kind of things that made a lot of people in the MBAs go into actual factories or finance or marketing. These days, everybody wants to go into consulting, right? Because, they just have to give decisions right, left, and center. They don't have to implement it. So that's the difference between the MBAs today and the MBAs of those days.
Thank you, sir. Here's a question from Mr. Rajan. One second, sir. Mr. Rajan, one second. Just keep coming. Yes. Mr. Rajan from Coimbatore. He said, sir, how owners and professional CEOs can get along well. What are the right set of actions that a professional CEO should take when entering a business where the founder is very much alive, well, and dominating?
Sorry, can you? Because
he says, how owners and professional CEOs, owners and professional CEOs can get along well. What are the right set of actions that a professional CEO should take when entering a business where the founder is very much alive, well, and very dominating?
Yeah, one of the ways, if you have to get along as a professional CEO in a family business, then you have to ensure that which is very true even with the professional managers, you have to keep the board out of the daily operation. You have to become the barrier between the company and the ownership or the board. That's the only way you can really function. Because if you let the board members talk directly to different people, then it is not going to work at all, because then they think that they can bypass the chief executive. And that's what has to be prevented.
Thank you, sir. One last question for the evening is a question from Mr. Stephen from Salem. He says, in one of the MMA events, Mr. Arsh Mariwala advised from his experience that one should always hire a more smarter individual than yourself as your subordinate. It brings a lot of success to your organization. Sir, I sincerely did this and now I'm in deep trouble. That the guy whom I hired doesn't just listen to me, and how do I handle and how do I come out of that situation?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
He says, sir, Arsh Mariwala spoke in MMA,
Yeah.
and he advised you must always hire a person who is smarter than you, will add a lot of value to your organization.
Yes.
And this gentleman followed Arsh Mariwala and hired a guy who is smarter, highly qualified. He said, now he's in deep trouble, this guy just doesn't listen to him, now he's resigning, he doesn't know how to handle. What is your word of advice to Mr. Stephen from Salem?
I suppose it is something that is very personal in that situation. It's not something where you can give a general answer to how to handle that.
Yes, very, very diplomatic answer, sir. I agree with you. Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Kumar, member of Managing Committee, and also Santanam, you also joined us on stage to present the memento on behalf of MMA, the coffee table book. It will be nice if you can come for a special invitee for the evening. Come and Rajkumar, you can also join them. The coffee table book of MMA, you will get a complete history of MMA in books. And also a book for you to read.
Thank you for this trouble that you took to invite all of us.
Yes. This is the coffee table book of MMA.
Thank you so nice. Thank you very much.
He's our company member. Part of our home. But you can get one. Read a book. I don't think you have seen this. It will be very interesting. Thank you so much, sir. I think
Wonderful listening.
thanks each one of you for joining this evening. It's a fascinating evening. And till we meet again and get back home safe, I would like to thank all the IMA Alumni Association, John, for choosing MMA to do this event jointly. Thank you so much. Good night. Till we meet again. Bye-bye.